And we are live, coming to you over the wireless internet in beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. And yes, my house is still a mess. Needs some TLC, but it's getting there. Slowly but surely. Cheese. Food of the gods. Tora's mad at me. Come on. Oh, man. Dropping things. See, here's Tora. Turned her back on me because I have more treats. She ate them all. Not my problem. I gave her some sliced turkey. My very own sliced turkey sandwich meat. Let's get the food out of my mouth. Yeah, my mouth wasn't full, but just the same. Okay, the title or the description, I mean, is was the 20th century really more war-torn than the 19th? Academics and pundits love to tell us that after the bright, cheery, hopeful 19th century, you know, the 1800s, all of a sudden the 20th century became filled with doom, gloom, and destruction, with all these wars. Well, yeah, we had the First World War, the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq. We had the formation of Israel and the wars against Israel. But the 19th century, the 1800s, a time of the Enlightenment, when people were more positive and cheerful and peaceful and give me a break. The 18th and 19th centuries were also war torn. We had Napoleon's expansion of French rule, building an empire. In the wake of the French Revolution, when at the end of the 1700s, they executed the king and his wife and set up the consulate and elections and stuff like that. Well, so we had allies against the French Empire expanding, but primarily England. The Napoleonic Wars lasted 15 years. Eventually, the British defeated Napoleon at Waterloo, and in the meantime, they had this little kerfuffle, a kind of scuffle with the colonies across the pond. Yes, the United States. You see, the British Navy was impressing Americans, and that doesn't mean they showed them something wonderful and they were impressed. It means that they would take American sailors off American ships and force them to serve in the British Navy, claiming that they were actually British citizens, Englishmen who were trying to escape the draft that England imposed to provide troops against Napoleon. Well, in some cases, they might have been right, but the United States did not take kindly to having their citizens forcibly removed to serve in someone else's military. Now, the headlines today, well, especially Canadians, but even American academics will try to tell you that the War of 1812 began when America attacked Canada. No, it began, the declaration of war was made because of the kidnapping and of American citizens to serve in the Royal Navy for England against Napoleon, and Napoleon was our friend. After all, Napoleon actually sold us the Louisiana Purchase, which more than doubled the size of the United States. Meanwhile, the English, since they were busy fighting Napoleon till about 1815, they were inspiring native tribes to attack the United States. They never got over the fact that these uppity Yanks in the colonies wanted a seat in Parliament to represent them. Oh well. Well, in the course of the war, the Americans did attack Canada, hoping that the colonists in Canada would take our side. They did not. But those skirmishes and outright battles along the Canadian border did stop the British from moving troops through Canada to attack us from the north. The British won many battles. They burned down the White House, where the president lived. Anyway, that's pretty war torn, and that's just the beginning of the 19th century. Then we have many, many battles against Native Americans, and Andrew Jackson with the Indian Removal Act. Very brutal and unnecessary war against people who lived here before us and continued to live here. Not a good sign for the peaceful, enlightened people of the 19th century who, they gave up religion as a source of conflict, leading to unjust wars. Well, then we have the Crimean War, shortly before our American Civil War. Russia was expanding into Eastern Europe, attempting to take over colonies of the Ottoman Empire. Oh, hi, Lily Russell. Good to see you. Let's see. My cursor is not in the little box there. Here we go. Lily Russell is here. I'll bet Howard is too. Oh, Witta is here. Excellent. So, from England defeating Napoleon to, uh, well, the United States, I guess they lost to Canada, but didn't, neither side lost any territory, and we won against England thanks to Old Hickory in Louisiana. Was that Baton Rouge or no, New Orleans? Colonel Jackson. Well, anyway, the British Navy quit for the most part, kidnapping American sailors to serve in the British Navy, which was the reason why our Congress declared war on England. The Crimean War, well, it began because Russia was in charge of protecting Christian shrines in Europe and the Holy Land, but within what we might call their sphere of influence. And there was some conflict with the Ottoman Turks as the Ottoman Empire was beginning to fall apart. And of course, being good Muslims, they didn't like Christians. They thought we were the infidel. Hi, Howard. Okay, my chat room is filling up. So, our peaceful 18th century with hope and love and kindness. Yeah, right. War of 1812, Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War. It's complicated, but England and France were allies with the crumbling Ottoman Empire of Turkey. And then we had, of course, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was rather small at the time, but the Austrians did push Russia back out of their sphere of influence. The Turks would have lost the Crimean War if England and France had not backed them up. It was the British Navy sailing into the Baltic Sea and attacking Sebastopol, which to this day is a Russian port. Has been since the 1600s when Russia originally freed Crimea from the Ottoman Turks. Well, hi, Philip. I have a wrench in the room. How many L's have you got? You've got 2 L's in Philip. But not 2 H's. And if you aren't convinced yet that the 1800s were just as bloody and gory and war-torn as the 20th, let's go to the American Civil War. Brothers against brothers, cousins against cousins. And yes, slavery was a big issue in the Civil War, but so was, ironically, taxation, which kind of inspired the Yanks in the colonies to have their little revolution against England. The industrial North was killing the economy of the South for much the same reason that the British killed the American economy. For the rulers in England, colonies were a source of raw materials. so that products could be produced in England and sold around the world. Well, for the industrial North, the American South was a source of raw materials to be shipped north and turned into products and sold. So, manufacturing and industrialization was discouraged. Hi, Jason, in the chat room. So, and the American Civil War was so devastating to both sides. It's just horrible. And then more Indian wars. Oh, and right before our Civil War, we had the Mexican American War. Mexico had already seized what used to be independent Spanish colonies after Spain withdrew from Mexico. They seized California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and the people in Utah, Nevada, and even north of those states were scared to death that Mexico would invade them. And that is why the Mormons were quite willing to give up the practice of having multiple wives in order to join the Union and have the protection of the American cavalry against Santa Anna and his army. Santa Anna was a brutal dictator. He was brutal to his own people and his own troops. So we've got Napoleonic Wars, War of 1812, War, Indian Wars, Civil War, Mexican-American War, and then the Spanish-American War. That's how we ended up with the Philippines as an American territory. That's how we gained influence in Cuba and Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico, by the way, is an American territory. Puerto Rican people are American citizens. I don't think so, Oswald. Hi, Oswald. Oswald says that the Mormons are the wealthiest religious organization in the States. I disagree. I think it's the Scientologists who have the real wealth. And by the way, L. Ron Hubbard copied many of the Mormon traditions when forming his religion. If you can call it that. Anyway, so yeah, in the 20th century, we have 2 world wars, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, and the wars resulting from the formation of the State of Israel. And lots of smaller skirmishes all over. The 1800s were no more peaceful and enlightened than the 20th. One might argue that they were more war-torn than the 1700s when, yeah, we had this little revolution in the United States and France had their revolution. But these things were primarily confined to local areas. 1800s, oh, Cambodia, yes. And then there's the Chinese taking over Tibet and Nepal in the 19th, let's see, no, that's the 20th century. Um, but the 19th century, the 1800s, I think that's when China had the Opium Wars. Let's check. Ironically, the first Opium War was in 1839 to 1847. And when was the Boxer Rebellion? About 1900. The Opium Wars were to stop the British from trading in opium and destroying the Chinese culture and civilization. The Boxer Rebellion was to kick all foreigners out of China. So I kind of think the 1800s might have been even more war torn than the 20th. And they involved the major powers of their time. 1700s, not so much. It was a time of. Stop it, phone. I can't figure out how to turn off that sound. Anyway, it was a time of consolidation. The Pope drew a line through South America to stop the conflict between Spain and Portugal over their colonies. And yeah, there was a lot of conflict between England and Spain, but nothing like the American Civil War has been seen before or since. The Jakarta method, Philip? I'm not familiar with that term. I'll have to look it up. I thought Jakarta started with a D, a DJ. Oh well. I'll bet Google doesn't care. The Jakarta method, Washington's anti-communist crusade and the mass murder program that shaped our world, is a 2020 nonfiction book by American journalist and author Vincent Bevins. Yeah, slaughter all around the world. It's been going on since before the invention of firearms. For example, the Spanish Inquisition was primarily designed to kick all the Jews out of Spain. And we had the conversos, the Jews who became Christian so they didn't have to leave Spain. And most of the heretics that the Spanish Inquisition targeted, tortured, and killed were these conversos, Jews who converted to the Catholic Christian religion but retained some of their traditions, their Jewish traditions. There were certain foods that if you ate food or if you didn't eat some other food, they'd say, oh, you're keeping kosher. And you'd be branded a heretic. For example, in Don Quixote, there's a scene in which a man testifies that he saw these two men eating chicken without any bacon. Yes, Philip, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. And by the way, it was primarily Jesuits, but sadly the Franciscans participated too. St. Francis was the, I guess, priest who decided he should preach to the animals, the wild animals, the domesticated animals, because they had souls too. But it was primarily Jesuits in Europe with the Inquisition. And it was about wealth and power. Don't kid yourself. The way an unpopular ruler stays in power is to find an enemy. First, they try to find an external enemy. So the French and the Russians call each other names so no one notices that their rulers are corrupt. But even better is when you find an internal enemy, and it's historically been the Jews over and over, being persecuted, driven out, killed. And of course, the officials and authorities get all the property that belonged to these Jewish people that they drove out or killed, and all the people are, hooray for our glorious leader. Makes me sick. And of course, in the United States, especially in the 1800s, the native tribes were just horribly treated, driven out of their land. Many were killed. And by the way, there's this myth that the U.S. cavalry gave the natives blankets that were contaminated with smallpox. It wasn't the cavalry, it was the owners of the trading posts trying to make an extra buck by selling the blankets when they were supposed to burn them because they had been used by smallpox victims. There were, yes, Philip, there were Dominican inquisitors too. I couldn't think of that name, but I know that Franciscans participated and Jesuits led the way, but I'm sure the Dominicans had a great role too. That was also part of the persecution of the Knights Templar. Oh man. You know, the Catholic Church today is trying to make up for what they did with those Indian schools, making children give up their native language and their culture. And now they have Indian schools where they teach the children their native language and culture. I think it just might be too late. Hi, Delta Dart. Good to see you. The man of many names. Wow. Bowser. Okay. I really think that taken as a whole, the 1800s were much more bloody and war torn than the 20th. But maybe that's just because we found cleaner ways to kill people. and sneakier ways. Instead of waging war, we just kind of infiltrate. Although we did wage war in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. We didn't go to war with the Soviet Union, but we kind of helped that regime to topple. I'm not sure there's any real difference between Russia now and the Soviet Union before, except maybe there's a little more liberty for the citizens. I mean, Russians still don't dare speak out against Putin, but, you know. Oh, wow. Philip says native language in eastern Washington has only 4 native speakers still living, and they're trying to teach some of the young people, but they all think in English. Yeah. Well, somebody better record their voices and find a way to write down what they say in their native tongue. There's a book I read many years ago, Ishi. He was the last of his tribe in California. And nobody spoke his language. They did find a member of a closely related tribe who could communicate, but their languages were not exactly the same. And this was in the very early 1900s. The man was starving when he was found, and he became a museum exhibit, but he wasn't confined. He was free to leave, but why would he? He was rescued, brought back to health, and allowed to, just do whatever he wanted, but people were allowed to come and watch him. I guess it beats starving to death. And the reason he was starving is because tourists found his food stashes and said, "Oh, a souvenir," and took them. Idiots. Yeah, I bet well, they did have, once again, members of another tribe who could at least communicate with him and translate. Yeah, but part of the problem was European powers ramping up conflicts where there were tribes who sided with the British and tribes who sided with the French. And so we call that the French and Indian War, shortly before the American Revolution. It was British Indians versus French Indians. Tribe against tribe. And part of it was ramping up fear among white settlers. They were afraid of the natives. Oh, they got toxic. Oh, yeah, the toxic FEMA trailers. Oh, they gave some of the trailers to Indian reservations. Yeah, after I believe it was Katrina. Well, that's when it was found out and made public, but I'll bet they've been doing it for ages. Trailers that should have been dismantled and discarded because they were loaded with toxic chemicals in the materials they were made out of, given to the survivors of natural disasters. Yeah, that figures. They just took the little warning sticker off and gave the trailers to, God. Well, you know what happened in Katrina in New Orleans? They set up this stadium as an evacuation shelter. They would not let people leave, not even when friends and family came to take them away to their homes. Well, the toilets were backed up. Criminals were committing crimes like, rape, murder, robbery, armed robbery at that. They didn't bother to take knives and guns away from the refugees from the hurricane. They ran out of drinking water. They didn't have enough food. But no, you can't leave. There's armed guards making sure you don't leave. And I forget which company it was, like Target or Walmart, somebody sent a semi truckload full of bottled water because they heard that there wasn't enough drinking water at the evacuation center. They were turned away. No, we won't take your water. People were dying, and they were kept imprisoned as if they had done something wrong. Let's see. Philip says one of his ancestors was written up in the local newspaper for living too far away from the other settlers and that they wouldn't be responsible for his safety. Well, that's why Daniel Boone blazed so many trails. Every time he found a good place to settle down, a bunch of people showed up and built their homes next door, so he had to leave again. He didn't want anything to do with them. They put him in danger by their stupid way of acting around the Native Americans. Daniel Boone, I can call him Cousin Daniel. My ancestors were cousins of Daniel Boone. Um, Daniel Boone made friends with the tribes and often got adopted into the tribes. They loved him. Well, yeah, Philip's ancestors obviously survived. The Indians didn't attack. Yeah, the townspeople were overly paranoid, and many of the conflicts were started by the people of the town, not the Native Americans. Their policy was leave us alone. Now, there were some tribes that would just kill anything that wasn't them or but that was rare. And the other tribes didn't like them. But basically, the Native Americans were used first by the European colonial powers. I mean, why bother to send your own troops if you can rile up the natives to fight for you? the Cherokee in particular, and many tribes of the eastern seaboard and the Great Lakes area were not nomads. They taught us how to make log cabins. They were settled. They had their own land and their own farms. They taught us how to grow corn and beans and squash. And asshole Andrew Jackson decided the Indians had to go. And yet there were Cherokee and others. It was primarily Cherokee that he moved to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. But there were Cherokee who remained in the Carolinas, in Georgia, in Florida, and apparently were not forced to leave. I need to do a deeper dive into that and find out just exactly how that worked, but I think my Cherokee ancestor just looked like a white woman, so she put on a white woman's dress and moved into town, and nobody cared. The Ohio Valley Mound Builders, yeah, but apparently those mounds were built by people who did not necessarily live there. They would hold a pilgrimage and come from all over to work on the mounds and to worship in their religion. And never forget Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce. I grew up calling them Nez Perce because that's how everyone said it back then. It's French, means pierced nose. They had rings in their noses. The Nez Perce, who were hounded unjustly by the U.S. cavalry. He pointed out that we worship the same God. Our customs and traditions might be different, but we all worship the same God. Long before any Christian missionary came to the United States, most of the Native Americans worshiped God. How'd they come to know about that? Well, I imagine God probably told them. He's God, he can do that. Or maybe, as, I've forgotten the name again. Let me grab the book. Oh, man. Gimpy. America, BC by Dr. Barry Fell. The second edition has a different cover. This is the first edition. He points out that many of the inscriptions found on rocks and artifacts in the United States indicate that ancient Native Americans came from all over the world. And most interesting to me is the Basques. You know, the inhabitants of that gray area between Spain and France. There's evidence that the Basques lived here and rode on rocks and stuff like that. Oh my God, only 4 native speakers of Nez Perce? Oh, that's horrible. Chief Joseph, by the way, who tried to move his tribe to Canada to get away from the American cavalry and not be stuck on a reservation. When he finally surrendered, what he said was, "I will fight no more forever." They're the ones who developed the Appaloosa horses, the ones with the spots. Some of them look like polka dots. Oh, wow. Anyway, there is evidence. Now, Barry Fell, he's no longer living, but he was a Harvard professor who investigated primarily the inscriptions, the writing that had survived from ancient times in the Americas. And he shows you this is the Basque alphabet, the Basque language. That one is, can't think of the word. Well, from the Middle East, an ancient Middle Eastern language. And this one looks an awful lot like Paleo Hebrew. Oh, that's interesting, Philip. Phrases in both Japanese and Basque sometimes have the same meaning. Hi, Larry and Creature. I'm okay. I wouldn't say good or well just yet, but I'm getting there. Um, I'm just ticked off by the academics who look back at the Enlightenment, late 1700s, and then well into the 1800s. All these enlightened people, so calm and peaceful and rational and good. And let's toss out that horrible religion that caused so much pain and suffering. Yeah, right. The whole world was torn up by war in the 1800s. I wonder if Lariat Creature is someone I know. Can't think right now. I do know one thing. I thought that the sequel to Dreamscape would come out last December, but it's actually scheduled for this December. COVID and other things kind of got in the way. But the second anthology with stories and poems by various writers is called Somniscope. So I'll be puttering around finding links that I might give you. Well, Larry, you're welcome anytime. Let's see, I'm supposed to type hi, Larry. I thought I did, but I don't see it, so I'll do it. There we go. Oh, I did, way up there. Never mind. Everyone's welcome as long as you aren't trolling us. Let's see. Philip says Rene Descartes was literally a mercenary. Oh, yeah. Descartes believed that animals didn't really feel pain, and that when they screamed, when a dog screamed in pain because Descartes was cutting him open without anesthesia. Oh, that's just a reflex. Descartes was the one who talked about the split between the two sides, like matter and spirit. Yeah, Jerku was good at math. That's Descartes. Garage rock guitar. Oh, I like guitars. I'm going to have to finish stringing my $10 thrift shop guitar. I don't know whether to call it thrift shop or yard sale. It was an open air table right outside a little shop. It won't sound all that great, but I don't mind. I'm not that good on the guitar. Well, mine's acoustic, Philip. What do you want for $10? I would kind of like to try an electric bass guitar. When I was in high school, I played the cello for a while. Well, if electric is best, yeah, volume. But hey, I'm not that good at. I don't really play guitar. I just know a few chords. I can get through House of the Rising Sun because it's easy. Oh, ukulele, yeah, ukulele, the little four-string Hawaiian guitar. I kind of would like to try banjo, but then it would make me think of that movie Deliverance, which, although well worth watching, it gave me nightmares. Yeah, folk songs. Folk songs are good. Yeah, I'm trying to write. It's hard to sit and type when your back is killing you. The bones in my back just cracked. They're not completely broken or smashed. But of course, the discs in between the cracked bones are not happy. I'm getting better. Been sitting here nearly an hour. John Lennon started on banjo. That's interesting. Well, I love music, but I have more desire than talent when it comes to singing or playing a musical instrument. And I'm happy with just being an amateur. Oh, I'm not going to do speech to text. When I get to where I can manage it, I will put the laptop computer on a lap tray and sit in a recliner chair where I'm not stuck, you know, up and down. Oh, by the way, I'm rocking back and forth because I'm in Great Granny's rocking chair. It is more comfortable than a plain straight back chair always, but especially right now. Huh, so the Unabomber had some contact with Pete Seeger? That's interesting. I had inherited from Phil, my late ex husband. Well, he gave it to me. I had a very old 78 of Pete Seeger, and somehow it got broken. It was one of those made on clay covered in shellac before they started making them all plastic or vinyl. Some were not vinyl, but some other plastic. But those old clay platters were very fragile. Okay. So Oswald tells me that the Unabomber went to a hippie summer camp in Michigan that Pete Seeger was a staff member of. Very interesting. Oh, by the way, I finally sent a my books. Took me a long time to send it because I kept having things get in the way. Oh, Lavender Girl is a new folk song? The title sounds familiar. Tora, don't have any treats. You ate them all. And you're still going to say hello to your adoring fans. Come on. Hold still. Such a cutie. I don't have any treats for you. You ate them all this morning. You did. And I gave you my good people sliced turkey, too. My sandwich meat. My lunch meat. Yeah. Oh, well. What? No, I don't have any. You ate it all. There's turkey on your dish, on your plate. Go eat it. Gotta do a little moving around. My back is beginning to feel the strain. Oh, I haven't finished the unboxing on camera, but I did look at the last few movies that Cardinal Sin sent me, and I've selected my favorite. He sent something like 24 DVDs and Blu-rays, and yet once I got to the last few, it was easy to pick my favorite. Want to know what it is? What else? Tom Baker, Doctor Who, Genesis of the Daleks. And it's a 2-disc set with 6 episodes and then some, what do you call it, special features? Oh, DVD extras. Problem is, it ends on a cliffhanger. They want you to buy the next set to see the. Well, we all know Doctor Who manages to escape and come out alive or else regenerate. That was a brilliant idea, by the way, to have him regenerate whenever an actor could no longer. It's every new Doctor is like a spin-off. So Doctor Who is a spin-off of itself. You know, like Laverne and Shirley was a spin-off from Happy Days. And then we had Joni and Chachi, which I never watched. I should have. Instant reincarnation. Well, in some cases, it wasn't terribly instant. I really loved Peter Capaldi as the doctor who never quite knew for sure who he was, kept having brain fog. evil computer. At least it didn't make a noise, but it's covering the screen with a notification that's irrelevant right now. Um, Tom Baker is for me, the iconic Doctor Who. Back in the Dark Ages, I think the 1970s, yeah, it had to be. I rediscovered Doctor Who. In the 60s, my older brother was watching it, and I caught a few episodes. But it ran so soon after school let out that I didn't always walk home fast enough to catch Doctor Who. I usually miss the first half of Dark Shadows. And all we had was a black and white TV, and it did not get UHF. We had channel 2 through channel 13, and that was all. No PBS or anything on the UHF band. No 28, no 50, none of that. So I didn't get to see Sesame Street when I was a child. So in conversations with friends my age, I had no clue what they were talking about. Because even teenagers watched Sesame Street back then. Our TV didn't get that channel. Anyway, when I rediscovered Doctor Who, it was the Tom Baker storyline. And I love that he's mostly calm, always peaceful, doesn't want to kill anything. Some of the more recent doctors have engaged in really violent activities. I mean, Tom Baker's Doctor Who would win by disarming the bomb. Some of the more recent ones would win by blowing things up. Oh, Doctor Who must be part jellyfish, huh? Do jellyfish regenerate? I've read somewhere that not all jellyfish, but some jellyfish are actually colonies. They're not a single creature. Oh well, there's a reason why I don't swim in the ocean. I know what lives there. Philip says yes, some jellyfish are colonies. Even the tidal pools kind of freak me out. Because you might run into a sea anemone, and their sting can really hurt. I don't know of any cases of an anemone killing anyone. They don't move around, they glue themselves to a rock, kind of like the sea urchins. The sea urchins look purple, they look like a ball. How to describe it? A ball of tentacles. Cthulhu! Oh, yeah, Cthulhu comes out of the sea to kidnap the young bride and have his way with her. Ew. Yeah, no, I got stung by a red jellyfish once when I was just wading in the breakers near the shore, but in the water up to my knees. Little red jellyfish stung me. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't life threatening or anything like that. I just got this itchy, burning red rash up and down my leg. Anyway, the sea urchins are purple, the anemones are kind of yellow. And you'll find them in tidal pools. Oh, and the sand crabs. It's so weird when you're walking on the wet sand after the wave has gone back out to sea. See, the West Coast is not like the East Coast. Our water is colder and more active. The waves really roll into shore. It has to do with the Coriolis effect because the earth is spinning. Oh, some jellyfish can regenerate. Yeah, a communist jellyfish, huh? Oh, well, anyway, you're walking on the wet sand after the wave has gone back out, and all these little crabs, sand crabs, about the size of just part of your thumb from the first knuckle up to the top, scurrying around under your feet and tickling you. They're harmless. They probably do pinch, but they're so small that you don't really notice. They can't break your skin. But it's weird having all these things walking under your feet. And I can't spend much time at the beach in Southern California. I burn and peel. I don't tan. My freckles get darker, but mostly I burn and peel, and it can be really painful and bad for your health. A bad enough sunburn can be life-threatening. Oh, bite-sized crab treats? No, I think the sand crabs are mostly guts. Not enough meat to bother with. Anyway, I found that up north, Northern California, close to Oregon, I can go to the beach for a couple hours. The sun is not as intense up there. And it isn't as hot out either. Anyway, we're off the track. The Enlightenment, when I studied world history, all I remember is that they had bigger windows that let in more light. That's about all I remember till just in, I try to watch educational stuff on YouTube along with British murder mysteries. I've learned that the Enlightenment was supposed to be this great breakthrough in human thought, in philosophy, etc. It really was a cruel era. People were mostly young men, but young women too were leaving the farms and leaving domestic service to work in the factories. They were overworked, underpaid, treated badly, and there were a lot of industrial accidents that could have been prevented if it had been profitable to do so. Workers were injured, maimed, killed by machinery that was designed for productivity and not for safety. Of course, before that, in the days when you took your wheat to the mill to be ground with flour, working in a mill was dangerous. That early industry, not only could you get caught in the grinding stones and lose a hand or lose your life, but if you weren't careful enough, flour is explosive and the grinding stones get hot. And some mills did actually explode and burn down, killing the workers. And academics now have to point out, but the science of the Enlightenment brought us so many modern conveniences and things that we now consider necessities. Well, it wasn't science that invented the flush toilet. It was technology. It was engineering. Science had very little to do with it. Even the telephone. Yeah, some of the inventors were scientists. But the telephone was not produced by a double-blind experiment with a control group and an experimental group. It was developed by Alexander Graham Bell figuring out how to transmit a voice over a wire. He thought about it, he tried this, he tried that, found something that worked. And Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb, but he and his employees just tried over and over to find a filament that wouldn't burn out too fast. And finally found one. That was not a controlled experiment with a control group, an experimental group, and double blind and peer-reviewed papers. It was just elbow grease and patience. Oh, Renaissance Florence would be fun to visit. Yeah. Would. But that's long before the Enlightenment. Renaissance reached Italy by the 1300s. They are considered the first to enter the Renaissance. I'm not sure that's correct, but that's what they say. When the ancient writings were rediscovered, primarily because Arab scholars had preserved manuscripts, copied them, and translated them into Arabic. And with the opening up of trade, mainly to get spices from Asia, European scholars discovered this treasure trove of Greek and Roman philosophy. And of course, the arts took off. That was a time when a good artist could make a living. Not so much these days. The term starving artist keeps sticking in my mind. Oh, you have the occasional success. Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso. But most of the great artists of the 1800s couldn't pay their own bills. Van Gogh, or as most Americans say, Van Gogh, it's Van Gogh. Vincent, his brother, supported him. He sold one painting in his entire life. And if I remember correctly, it was to pay the bill he owed a shopkeeper for his food. Let's see. Teddy Roosevelt's daughter was the first teenager with her own phone. Huh. I don't know. It was a big deal and expensive in the 60s to have a second phone in your house. They had this thing called a princess phone, so your daughter could have a phone in her bedroom and talk to her friends. But it did not have its own phone line. It did not have its own phone number. It was just an extension of the house line, the phone that was usually bolted to the wall in the kitchen. And it was expensive. You had to rent the phone from the phone company and pay for the service every month, whether you used that phone or not. Criminy. Well, Tora gave up. She's taking a nap and just waiting to see if some more treats magically appear. Anyway, my back is starting to feel, even though it's a rocking chair, it's starting to feel unhappy about sitting. I really don't think you can find any period in American or world history that have a lot of warfare, often unnecessary. And we're tired of it. Both of the Bushes, George H.W. and W., took us to wars that we should not have waged. Some guy in a cave in Afghanistan coordinated 9/11, so we attacked Iraq. And then it turned out he wasn't even in a cave in Afghanistan. He was in a luxury apartment in Pakistan. But we ripped apart Iraq, which, by the way, had been one of the buffer states between Iran and the rest of the Middle East. Iran, formerly Persia, is dangerous, very dangerous. I really don't think even Putin is stupid enough to start a nuclear war. What's his name in China? I cannot remember his name. Qing something? He might threaten. I doubt that he'd actually drop an atomic bomb. But the mullahs of Iran, they would welcome a war that killed everybody on the planet, because then they'd all go to heaven and all their enemies would go to the other place. Thank you, Philip. Xi Jinping of China. Yes, streaming services are apparently the new phone companies, and most of them are owned by phone companies. Some are owned by cable companies, but now, if you're on cable TV, you might as well get their phone service too. So they're really phone companies. It's incredible. Oh, and I hear that for low income families, Verizon is offering phone service for only $30 a month. Phone and internet, but not high speed internet, just data. Uh, my internet service, which is bundled with the phone service, internet itself is $20 a month. Of course, since I have phone and internet, so I have the computer, the cell phone, and the tablet, or rather the computer modem, cell phone, tablet. It's about $120 a month for the whole bundle. And I pay a little extra now because I have to make monthly payments on the new phone. I can get by for 2 or 3 years before planned obsolescence kicks in and the phone just doesn't work anymore, or it won't hold a charge for more than 1 hour, which is okay if you're at home sticking it back on the charger, but not good if you're out on the road and need to call a tow truck or something. Oh, my back. Up, up. Anyway, I am a very happy camper with the Doctor Who video, DVD. Story number 78. So I guess I'll have to look for story number 79 next time I feel like splurging or I have enough Amazon gift cards. Anyway, I'm really happy to recommend America BC by Dr. Barry Fell. Once again, this is the first edition. The second has a different cover. Let's see, according to the back of the book, he describes ancient European temple inscriptions from New England and the Midwest that date back as far as 800 BC. And it's agreed that most of the native tribes arrived here after we went from BC to AD. Yeah. Yeah, America BC. That isn't it. Yeah, it is. He's not a medical doctor. He's a Harvard professor doctor, Dr. Barry Fell. There, typed it in chat. And I still dispute the Siberia theory that, well, there might have been some of that. People coming from Northeast Asia, Siberia, across the Bering Strait to the Americas. But the native tribes of northern Mexico and the southern United States tell us that some of their people migrated north and went to Siberia, and that's how they came to be related. They do share some DNA. Yeah, Dr. Barry fell just as long as he isn't a dentist, Philip says. True. Although I don't worry about the dentist anymore. I drop off my teeth and pick them up later. I really like having dentures because my natural teeth were so bad. Constant source of pain and frustration. Anyway, I am just about out of steam here. The back is healing, but I still can't walk very far. After about 20 feet, I start to feel the pain. And by 50 feet of walking, my legs don't want to move. And I just want to sit down or lie down. Which is why I keep not getting things at the grocery store. So I'm going to have to set up a delivery of all the things I forgot. Oh, The Lost City of Z. I love that movie. It was on Amazon Prime. I don't know whether it is anymore. And at one time it was on Netflix. Yeah, it's these ancient ruins, an abandoned city made of stone deep in the jungles of South America. Dr. Joseph Farrell talks a lot about that. And um, Walter Bosley has written a book about that, about the search for this lost city. And the manuscript, it was a sort of memo from some Portuguese military who had discovered a city in the jungles. I think in Brazil, but I'm not sure. The Amazon jungle, anyway. The remains of an ancient civilization. There's a lot about history that we just don't know. You see, in war, the victors write the history, and in just civilization in general, the survivors write the history. And here we are facing plague, war, threats of war. Ironically, people crossing the border from Mexico into the United States, while Americans are traveling to Mexico for a better life. Interesting. COVID is persisting and mutating. I have not heard that it's more deadly, but it is definitely more contagious. Oh, time to turn on the ceiling fan. starting to get a little uncomfortably warm. So let's take off the little jacket before I roast alive. There, here we go. Let's see. Fawcett was the one who disappeared in South America while looking for the lost city of Z. And before him, Richard Burton, not the actor, the British official and I guess archaeologist or something, explorer anyway, probably found it but never wrote a word about it. Yeah, well, Fauci is, what can I say that won't get me booted from the platform? Never mind. I remember the Baldwin Hills that kind of skirt Culver City, where I was born and spent the first 11 years of my life. The Little League built a new ball field. And in order to do that, they flattened the top of a hill, exposing all kinds of fossils of sea creatures, mostly shells, that were so old they crumbled if you touched them. Okay, Robert F. Kennedy, Philip says. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. co-wrote a book about Dr. F. Do you mean Fawcett or Fauci? I guess. Oh, okay. Sadly, it's often the scientists who are ignoring the science. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I like it as Dr. F. It brings to mind a four-letter word. Oh, wow. There's just so much evidence that gets swept under the rug because it does not fit the narrative. In all fields, there's all these theories about who really wrote Shakespeare's plays. And they claim that the actor, William Shakespeare, was illiterate. So he couldn't have written them. He was just an actor. Well, how do you know? Oh, forbidden knowledge, yes. Well, maybe it was a committee led by Francis Bacon. But I just can't see it. I could see them maybe spoofing Shakespeare and writing Titus Andronicus, which to this day is a controversial play, and many just refuse to believe that Shakespeare wrote it. It's a blood play. It's just full of all kinds of violence and death and murder. But I can't see even a committee of 4 or 5, even 6 intellectuals writing all those plays and all those sonnets attributed to William Shakespeare. If anything, if the actor was really illiterate, he certainly could have had a scribe to write it down while he told the story, which would make a lot of sense seeing as how many words that Shakespeare used are spelled differently in different manuscripts and even on different pages of the same manuscript. And he didn't even spell his own name the same every time. So maybe he was telling the stories and someone else wrote it down, someone who could read and write. But I find it difficult to believe that an actor would not need to know how to read at the very least, since he had to learn his lines in the play. So maybe he just didn't have good handwriting or something. I don't know. Anyway, and there's a revival of the old theory that Mary Shelley did not write Frankenstein. It was really the work of Percy Shelley. I like the story of Frankenstein, but I don't think it's well written. Really don't. It's an epistolary novel, which means it's all correspondence, either letters that people sent or entries in their diaries. And I don't like that type of novel anyway. But we really have some serious problems with the way the novel tells the story. I see it as Mary Shelley's warning to her husband of the consequences of his dabbling in the occult. He was very deeply into magic, alchemy, table tapping, seances, all kinds of stuff. I seriously doubt that Percy Shelley would have written a novel warning of the dangers of what he was so into. He just loved it. Either someone's whistling or we have a new bird in the tree. I think it's a human whistling for a dog. Table tapping, with a TABLE, tapping. Well, people would sit around a table with a medium, holding hands and all that, and they would ask a question, and the table would bump up, lift up, and tap down, tap its legs on the floor. It was usually one tap for yes and two taps for no, or they would do kind of like a Ouija board. Which letter of the alphabet? One tap is A, two taps is B, three taps is C. Darn, I learned that from an Agatha Christie murder mystery. It didn't have Poirot or Miss Marple. I can't remember who murdered the guy. I think I keep falling asleep before the end of the audiobook. It is almost 7 hours long. Cable tapping, Howard says, is what you do if you want to get free TV from your neighbor. Actually, yeah. Um, That happened to me by accident. I thought the Disney Channel was included in the subscription I got when my son was young enough to like the Disney Channel. And I complained when the transmission went wonky. So I called them up and they said, "Oh, well, you don't have the Disney Channel." I said, "Well, I did for a couple weeks." "Oh, well, you shouldn't have." And then they discovered, I wish I hadn't called, but I didn't know. They discovered that one of my neighbors had tapped the cable to get free cable. Oh, wow. And my back is seriously unhappy. And it's been an hour and 40, and I'm just rambling. And I was sort of coming to a conclusion. I think I'll do the unboxing of the last of the movies that Cardinal Sin sent me, probably sometime tonight. I'll just record it and upload it, and it'll probably finally get onto YouTube tomorrow morning. My internet connection can be very, very slow. Yeah, it's time to. I'm using the hotspot on the phone and it's draining the battery. So I'll plug that into the charger before I lose it. I think that's the last of my mobile spot is this podcast, but by next week I should have more high speed available on the modem thingy. They call it a jetpack. It's turned off right now. I can take it anywhere and connect it to any computer for internet. Of course, the familiar websites keep, when I use a different computer, you have to prove it's you. You want us to send you an email or text you a code and answer one of your secret questions. These websites can actually detect that you're on a different computer from the one you always use. And they all think I'm in San Diego. So I don't do anything about that. If someone wants to steal my identity and they think I'm in San Diego, that's cool. I'm nowhere near there. And yet my phone knows when I travel 5 miles from Crestline to Twin Peaks. The weather app that tells me the temperature and all that, it knows what town I'm in. Oh, at Sequentia. Unfortunately, I'm about to sign off. I was complaining about all the warfare and bloodshed in the 1800s at the height of the Enlightenment when we were such better people, more peaceful and kind and generous and intellectually superior because we gave up the old religion. Yes, Philip, the phones know all. So when I forget to take my phone with me, I go, oh, well, Google doesn't know where I am. That's cool. Anyway, I'm about to sign off. My back can't take much more. Stretch. But I'm doing better. It was the 8th of June when I went to the emergency room, but I had broken it a few days before that and just thought I could tough it out until I couldn't get up from the recliner chair. I could not put down the footrest, and I could not, evil computer, I could not get up with the footrest there. Oh. Dell is installing operating system recovery resources for my PC. Quit notifying me, I don't care. Have I heard of any cats catching COVID? I suppose they say that your pets can catch it, but if you believe the home testing kits, I'm still negative. They keep sending me free home testing kits, so I might as well use them once in a while. Well, scientism is a religion. They just have their own God. I think they make themselves gods. I guess COVID is not particular about which species it infects. Apparently started in bats. Well, bats are mammals. So I guess it likes all mammals. I don't know. Well, it's time to say thank you all for listening and have a great day. It really is time to go. Thank you all for coming into the chat, for listening and participating. I don't, I mean, I'm a Baptist, but I don't hate Methodists, Presbyterians, or Catholics. As long as you don't set yourself up as God. And that's what these scientists tend to do. Oh, we went to school for all these years and learned so much. Yeah, I've studied the sciences. You learn archaic terms from dead languages to describe things that ordinary people know and can express in plain language. But because you use all these big, obscure words, nobody can understand you. So science is really a language or a religion based on language. Oh well, maybe more on that next week. Love you all. Be good. And I'll see you again. Bye. Do I have Calvinism? Okay, not yet. Do I have Calvinism? No, I'm Arminian. Some Baptists are Calvinist, some are Arminian. It has to do with faith versus works. St. Paul said, we are saved by faith, by grace through faith, not by works. But James said faith without works is dead. So you've got the Calvinist Baptists who say you're saved by your works, and the Arminians who say you're saved by faith. I say that we do good works because we're thankful for the grace we have received by faith. Anti-fictionalist, nihilist, Damn, nihilism is the worst ism. Yeah. Okay. You got me to stop ending the show by posting here, but really, I gotta go. My back is starting to scream at me. No, I had an experience with Missouri Synod Lutherans. They say Lutheran. And I'm not, yeah, fruit is the seed and works are the fruit. Faith is the seed, pardon me, and works are the fruits that grow. Yeah, so really not Arminian, the faith people completely, but I reject Calvinism as you have to earn your path to heaven. No, you don't. It's a gift. And you try to be good and do good because you're grateful, not because you're earning anything. If you could earn salvation, you wouldn't need God. Okay? All right. And if you could be God just because you're a scientist, you're delusional, deluding yourself. Okay, guys, gotta go. Maybe I'll string my guitar. See ya.